Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Headline Geopolitics. I'm your host, José Niño, and this evening I'm joined by Jenin Younes, a prominent civil liberties and free speech attorney. She's been a very outspoken critic of both left-wing and right-wing assaults on free speech, especially now with regards to some of the latest events in Gaza. Jenin, it's great to have you on tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, before we start delving into like some of the more like the gritty details of what's happening in Gaza, I'd love for you to share some of your background because it's actually quite unconventional. How did you transition from just advocating for civil liberties during the COVID era to your current like discourse surrounding Gaza and the plight of the Palestinians?
Well, during the COVID era, I was a public defender actually in New York. Well, when it started, and I was at odds with most of the people around me. As you can imagine, a public defender in New York is a very left-wing crowd. I had always had more of a libertarian streak. I have some left beliefs tendencies. I'm very socially liberal. But I'm for limited government, kind of a federalist. That's probably the best way to explain my politics. And believe in individual sort of, individual liberty and no collective punishment and that kind of thing. So I was opposed to COVID policies that put me at odds with most of the people around me. I ended up transitioning to an organization that was fighting lockdowns. And there I became involved in challenging COVID vaccine mandates and then censorship around COVID, which was mostly had to do with the Biden administration sort of threatening what we call job owning in law, like social media companies into censoring speech that differed from its own positions, especially on the vaccines, but also other COVID-related matters. After October 7th, everything changed. So I was sort of, I wrote for, we talked about this a little bit before we started. I wrote for Tablet magazine, which is very Zionist, very pro-Israel. I didn't know anything about them before COVID. They solicited a couple of articles from me about free speech and the vaccine mandates based on some tweets I wrote. I never wrote anything about Israel. I didn't know that much about them, and I didn't really. I mean, I assumed they were probably Zionists, but I didn't really care. I'm like, if you
they're more highbrow.
Yeah.
They're more highbrow compared to other pro-Zionist publications, and they can be a bit nuanced. But at the end of the day, in an existential crisis like October 7th, they're going to side with the House.
Right. And I mean, now they've gone completely batshit crazy, if I may say, excuse my language on the podcast.
No,
and
go ahead.
I tried to get them to publish an article about the hypocrisy of so many of the people who complained about censorship during COVID and were now advocating for it when it comes to Palestine-related issues. And they were like, there's no way we're running this. In any event, as like personal background, my father is actually Palestinian. So my name, Jenin, he named me after the city, and some people might be familiar with it. Yes. The heart of the Palestinian resistance. But my mom's American. I was raised in America. But I've always been aware. My dad grew up in the West Bank under the occupation, the Israeli occupation. Well, first Jordanian, then Israeli. He was about 15 in 1967. So I don't know how much you want to get into history, but he experienced it. He, continued to experience it when he went back to visit his family. My extended family is there. Like my grandparents till they died, my aunts and uncles, cousins all live in the West Bank. So I'm, I've been extremely aware of the issue for as long as I can remember. My father's very passionate about it. He, since I was a child, he talked to me about Zionist influence on American politics and would actually warn me, he would tell me a lot of stories about what the Israelis did to him and his family and settlers did. And he would say, but like, don't talk about this. Don't go to school and talk about this because they'll ruin your career if they
hide your power level.
Yeah. And, that the Zionists will make sure that your career, any future career prospects are destroyed if they see you as a threat. So like, when I was in college, he also warned me, be careful. So this was just an issue I was very familiar with. And then when October 7th went down, I was working among many conservatives. I work for an organization that many people consider conservative. And I found myself pretty much at odds with everybody around me who was advocating for sort of just indiscriminate bombing of civilians. And yeah, it's been downhill since then.
Oh, wow. Not to pry too much, but is the Palestinian side of your family Christian or Muslim?
Muslim. But like very actually pretty traditional. My dad has a very interesting story. Maybe someday you can have him on. He grew up very, very poor. He's from a village outside of a town called Nablus that was founded by his grandfather. So it's just all my relatives and, some of the women that married into the family who aren't, and then the children. So it's maybe 100 people. And he grew up without running water or electricity, no roads, no cars. He really wanted to get an education. His parents were illiterate. But he really wanted to get out of there. He didn't want to live like that. And when his village fell under Israeli occupation, he really wanted to get out. So he ended up just sort of forging ahead, as difficult as it was. Like he said he would have to like take care of the sheep at night. And then he would, he'd get like 3 hours sleep at night, go to school during the day. He ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Jordan and studied English. And then he got a scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin.
That's my alma mater.
Really?
Yep.
So my mother was set in the same PhD program studying linguistics, and that's how they met. So that's the story.
So yeah, that's interesting. UT Austin has a fantastic Middle Eastern Studies department. Even though I didn't focus more on that, I focused more on East Asian and Latin American studies. They have some great professors there, and that's how I started getting into the whole Israel-Palestine conflict from the few Middle East studies classes I took there. That's funny you mentioned that background because unlike a lot of other people, because I'm actually from Venezuela and I'm more accustomed to Latin America, my experience with Palestinian people has been mostly with Palestinian Christians, because a lot of people in the U.S., they see this as a traditional Muslim versus Jewish divide, and I think that's incredibly simplistic because there's a large Palestinian and broader Arab diaspora in Latin America that's all Christian. Most of the Palestinians, like I lived in Chile, and one of my best friends is a Palestinian Christian whose family came when the Ottoman Empire collapsed. His grandparents came, and a lot of these people to this day, like in Chile, has the largest Palestinian diaspora outside of the Middle East.
Yeah, I learned that recently, actually.
Yep, and it's all Christian, and that's one thing I feel that is really missing in this discussion, because I think there's a lot of what I like to call cognitive pollution and distorted history being used in the Palestinian versus Israeli conflict, because it's really not a sectarian type of religious conflict. It has very ethnic components and even, dare I say, racial components to it that I think have to be factored in when we're talking about this, because the media obviously is going to give you the most distorted perspective on this matter.
Right. That's absolutely true. Whenever people say, oh, this isn't, an ancient conflict that goes back thousands of years between Jews and Muslims, it's like, no, this is a land conflict that was started because Jews came over, the Zionists came over, and they wanted land that other people were living on. And this whole land without a people for people without a land is just something made up to make it sound good. But yeah, it's an interesting point you made. And another fascinating component of the Christian aspect, I would say, is that I think it's been changing. It's been very recent in terms of changing the discourse in America. Like a lot of American Christians are suddenly learning, wait a second, they're bombing Catholic churches, like some of the oldest Catholic, Christian communities in the world, probably ones descended right from Christ. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is an example of someone who I think has sort of, that's changed her view.
Yes. Yeah. Go into more detail about that, because many of our listeners are probably not that aware of how just the devastating nature of the Israeli state's punitive response to October 7th has actually seen a series of horrific attacks against Christian churches and other monuments to longstanding Christian communities there.
Yeah, so I don't actually know the statistics, but it's destroyed a number. It's destroyed, I would say, the majority of Christian places of worship, I believe. I'm not an expert on this, but there were a number of bombings at the beginning, and actually Justin Amash, I'm sure you know him.
Yes.
Former congressman, is a Palestinian Christian. Well, his parents were Palestinian Christians. And several of his cousins were killed early, and he tweeted about the bombing of the church that they went to. So I don't know the stats on it, but it's a lot. And then there was a recent Catholic one that was bombed or that was attacked and killed a couple of people and injured a number more. So this is something that a lot of Americans simply aren't aware of, is that I think it's 10% of Palestinians are actually Christian. But I'll also say, I don't, it bugs me a little bit when it's like Americans care because it's Christians and they didn't care when it was Muslim children.
Yeah.
It's all, these are all innocent people. Not all, of course, there's some Hamas people among them, but it's mostly innocent people getting killed. And the vast majority of Muslims also just want to live in peace in the land that they have inhabited for centuries in their communities. And unfortunately, Benjamin Netanyahu's government, and frankly, the Israeli government for a long time, has had expansionist ambitions that have been at odds with that.
You've been in the political space for some time, and before your COVID work, did you see any potential for positive changes to be made with regards to the Israel-Palestine issue, or have you always had cynical views about that?
Kind of cynical. I don't know if you recall or you paid attention in 2014, and I don't know how old you are, so I don't know if you were old enough.
No, I was very much paying attention then.
Yeah, there was Israel attacked Gaza. I now forgot how many people were killed. It was several thousand, and there was a specific incident that sticks in my mind, and I know a lot of people's of several little boys were playing soccer on the beach. These were very young children, 5-6 years old, within view of a hotel where a lot of journalists were staying. And it was clear that they were intentionally targeted. And the journalists reported on that. And of course, Israel denied it and said it was a mistake. And that it was, that was a very big incident to me. I had, by coincidence, my best friend started dating a very, very right-wing Israeli. And we got in a huge falling out. And I was basically like, I can't be friends with someone who defends this. But it was very painful. And so I was like, I can't deal with it. It's too emotional for me. I feel too attached to it. And that, a lot of the defenses that I hear, Palestinians raise their children to hate. Palestinians just hate Jews. That I know they're not true because, I know Palestinians. I'm from a half Palestinian family. I spent time around them. That is absolutely not true. There is antipathy towards Israel and Israelis because they have taken away Palestinians' land and their rights, and anybody would be angry at their occupier and have animosity towards them. That absolutely makes sense. Do you think that that skepticism towards Israel's policies in Palestine, and it's also just broader and disproportionate influence over U.S. politics, do you think that has improved since you've been observing that issue? Sorry, can you say it again?
Do you think that the skepticism towards Israel's influence on U.S. politics, and it's also humanitarian abuses against the Palestinians, those sentiments increase the skepticism?
Oh, sure. 100% since October 7th. Not literally 100%, but absolutely, there's been a lot more skepticism. One of the reasons I was skeptical of the government's response to COVID and the media's presentation was because of the Palestine-Israel conflict. Like I was aware, and my dad would show me like a New York Times article or something, and be like, look at how they twist this headline. They use the passive voice whenever Israel commits violence.
Oh,
like,
yes, yes.
Say, like he would sort of teach me how they twisted the events or didn't cover things. Like they always cover when Israeli is killed by a Palestinian, but they never cover when a Palestinian is killed by an Israeli.
It's like a natural disaster.
Yeah, exactly. So this gives the American people, of course, the impression that it's the Palestinians who are always violent. And so that I understood from a very early age how the media shapes our perceptions of things. And so I was skeptical of mainstream media forever. And that made me skeptical of the COVID narrative and made me look beyond it. So that's sort of an aside. But as for it changing, yes, I would say it's changed a lot. I mean, people are becoming very aware of the influence of the Israel lobby. I think social media has had a lot to do with it. People can, the mainstream media doesn't have control anymore over what people see. And Palestinians can post the photos for themselves. And of course, there are people like Max Norda on Twitter calling it Pallywood or whatever. But we know, that these are mostly real images. There might be some fake ones. But yeah, I think it's changed drastically since October 7th.
Now, I want to center this more with like the public policies, because with Donald Trump in the mix, a lot of people, especially this was in 2016 and myself included, for a brief minute were somewhat optimistic that with Trump's criticisms of all these never-ending wars and the DC consensus of foreign policy interventionism, that you would see some changes in terms of U.S. foreign policy. But it looks like things have largely stayed the same. And based on all of this, how do you generally assess Trump's overall Middle East policy from his first term into also his present term?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. I didn't vote for him in 2024. I just couldn't bring myself to.
Oh, me neither.
But I did in 2020 actually, because I thought he would be slightly better on COVID. So yeah. I'm not, it's always to me like lesser of two evils, whatever, like just a sort of symbolic vote. I voted for Jill Stein just as like I'm not a socialist or whatever, Green Party, whatever she is, but it was just like I'm making it clear this vote is about the genocide.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for voting for Trump ever. I think that, given how the establishment is and how much of a grip they have on everything, and they're clearly not working for the American people, I understand why people would be drawn to someone who's like, I'm something different. And so yes. I don't blame anyone. Unfortunately, he's disappointed all of us. And I had advocated for him over Harris. I was like, I'm not voting for him, but I do kind of hope he wins. Because Harris said she was just going to continue Biden's genocidal policies. And I didn't think she was going to do anything different. And Trump said he might. So I was like, there's some hope. He's obviously disappointed all of us. I don't know if it would be worse under Harris. Nobody can really know. It's a counterfactual. But obviously, he's under the influence of my suspicions are about him, or my impressions are that he has anti-interventionist tendencies. He doesn't like war. He realizes it's a waste. Most of these wars that we're in, or almost all of them, are a waste. But he doesn't have strong convictions, and he can be easily swayed. And he's surrounded by Zionists, war hawks, neocons, whatever you want to call them, who are pushing him. And he doesn't have the strength to say no. And it's possible that there are threats or blackmail involved as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So this is like hindsight's 2020. Based on my research, Trump, I mean, if you look at his mentor, Roy Cohn, I mean, this is a guy who basically got the political Jewish community in the United States to transition from leaning more towards the left towards just like Zionism, from like supporting communism in the 50s to like becoming more Zionist. And Trump's family, like, it goes back decades, has consorted with very like some of like the seediest elements of Zionism. Like we're talking like stuff ranging from the Jewish mafia to the Russian mafia. He has some very weird connections there. And if you look at his first term, Trump broke a ton of diplomatic taboos on the Israel issue, from the Abraham Accords, basically like sidestepping the Palestinian peace issue and just getting Arab states to recognize Israel, to the recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Like that's a huge blow against the concept of territorial integrity, which is the liberal international order supposed to back. And then moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I've actually I have an article where I described Trump's presidential terms, both in the first and second, as a Judeo-accelerationist presidency, because he has not even like neocons like Bush, Reagan would actually have even gone that far. In fact, they Reagan and Bush, they've actually condemned some of Israel's actions in the UN. The US would condemn. Now there's no even like pretense whatsoever. It's become very radical in certain stuff.
That's true. I guess I have some hope. It's like so insane, and the population seems to be waking up to this, and to this just like untoward influence that Zionists have over our politicians. I mean, you can see it playing out. Like, I think most people on Twitter wonder why we have politicians like Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton, who are and John Fetterman, constantly talking about Israel while their own districts are poor and suffering and, you know, not getting the resources that they need and can't, pay their credit card bills. But for some reason, they have to divert a lot of their tax money to Israel. So I really think that, like, everything that's happened has been horrible, and the level of death and destruction. And, I'm a mother of a young child, like especially the death of children, or injury, the amputations to children, like that. Just I can hardly bear to look at it or think about it. I think you don't even, you don't have to be the mother of a young child, but seeing my kid every day, and thinking like I can imagine that happening to him. It's very, it's been unbearable. So I don't want to say anything. And this could be worth it, but I mean, perhaps a silver lining is that this is sort of bringing out the just extreme influence that and just improper influence of this lobby on American politics.
Yes,
that's gone for decades with no one really doing anything about it ever since JFK was killed over it. And I'm maybe only joking.
I mean, I will say this. I actually agree with one of the points that you said before, that Kamala Harris, I think, would have not been better on this issue. I think a lot of the same stuff would happen. It actually is kind of worse because liberal Zionists, I actually think in some ways are more dangerous because they, especially those in the Democratic Party and even some of the progressive circles too, because they have like they're more skilled at kind of masking the Zionist regimes excesses, whereas when you have like people like Randy Fine and other like really hard right these grug tier Jewish supremacists, from Itamar Ben-Gvir to Bezalel Smotrich, these people are all like a parody. They have like no subtlety or sleight of hand when they try to like mask their policies. It's just pure it's a Bronze Age mindset with like how they operate their politics, that it actually makes a lot of people hostile. Whereas people like Biden, Kamala Harris, and these other DNC politicians, because they're so conditioned to basically engaging in sophistry through their university experiences and working in think tanks, they're able to conjure up the worst mental gymnastics to justify Israel's behavior. It kind of sounds credible to people because it's kind of like the dumb person's view of what a smart person looks like. But when you actually like have the other right-wing side advocate for this, they're like, oh my God, this is just horrific. It's not defensible.
Yeah, I can't agree. I totally agree with you. I have all these sort of boomer relatives who are just hardcore Democrats, and they think like Kamala Harris is the best thing ever. I don't know how it's possible to think that, but they fall for just the language, like, oh, because she talks about like people of color. And I'm like, yeah, but she said she'd continue Biden's policy of sending bombs to kill Palestinian kids. So like, I'll take Donald Trump, who's extremely crass, if he'll stop that. And I mean, some people like Michael Tracy basically have called me an idiot for thinking that, but I don't think it was insane to be like,
seriously? Wow.
Well, he likes to be a little bit acerbic on Twitter.
yeah, he likes playing that card. I've seen him with the Epstein stuff. That's a whole other kind of worms. He plays that kind of contrarian role, but that's interesting.
Oh yeah, we had Mel and I had him on our podcast. So they got in a very heated debate over Epstein.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, it's a lot of yelling. I said at some point I feel like a couples therapist. Man. I was sort of the moderator. It's not my I tend to agree more with her. Clearly Epstein was up to shady stuff, and I suspect he was working for intelligence, but I don't know the details. They knew the details about all the court appearances and stuff like that I couldn't, that's kind of like where my leanings are. Interesting.
That's also interesting. Based on your time, in your experience in New York, did you find that your views, even when you expressed them on Palestine with liberals, were they generally accepted, or were you shunned equally by those types and the right as well?
That's an interesting question. I would say in New York, a lot of liberals did not agree with me on Palestine. A lot of did, though. I would say that was kind of a 50-50. So I remember I actually started at my public defender office in 2012, right out of law school, and there was actually a small operation. Israel was bombing Gaza. I forgot exactly what happened, and I was upset about it. And I heard there were a couple of older Jewish lawyers talking about it, and they were clearly pro-Israel, and I felt very uncomfortable. And I was just and I think if you were in that same public defender office today, there would be nobody there who would be defending Israel's actions. I think.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Since 2012. So yeah, I think the progressives and liberals have changed on this issue. I mean, a lot of people just go along with what they don't really know anything.
Have progressed, because that's the thing too about democratic politics. There is definitely a spectrum. Do you say progressives have generally been more principled over the years than their liberal counterparts?
Oh, how do you define progressive versus liberal?
I would say a progressive would be more along the lines of Bernie Sanders, AOC, kind of the squad, and then some people. Well, the exception being Richie Torres. That's the glaring exception, but more
on himself a progressive.
Yeah, I mean that's that. He's kind of part of the whole progressive except Palestine, that PEP type of
PEP. Yeah. I know. I think I consider them all the same. They're all the same. I mean, I guess there might be leftists. There are true leftists. I would put in a different category, Chris Hedges, for instance.
Yes,
I think is a real leftist. But to me, liberals and progressives are similar and equally unprincipled. What I've found is however people categorize themselves, that really boils down to are you principled or are you not principled? Are you authoritarian or are you anti-authoritarian? Do you believe in individualism or collective guilt? Those are sort of the three things that divide people. And I would say I'm an individualist, no collective guilt. I'm anti-authoritarian, and I'm principled. I'll defend pro-Israel speech, even though I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll defend someone. Sorry, let me correct that. I'll defend someone's right to say the pro-Israel speech. I won't the content of the speech.
No. We don't want this clipped out of context. It is interesting because having been myself really involved in the political process, but more on the rights sphere, you start to see a lot of people the differences they have in their politics is aesthetic. It's just not. It's branding and aesthetics. Yes. There's not much substance because look at it this way. You mentioned MTG before. She's actually been better on this issue lately than AOC, for example.
Yes. I just donated $50. I tweeted a screenshot. I donated $50 there. I said, I'll donate to anyone who says they won't take money from AIPAC, and I hope I go broke.
Based on what you're seeing lately, do you think that there's actually more fertile ground for a kind of like more an Israeli skeptic movement to emerge in the Republican Party than the Democratic Party at this point?
Yes. That's funny. I just talked to my dad about this. I actually focus my efforts more on the right. Partly because I've just been more ingrained in them, and I also just see it emerging. And it's sort of, I think the approach. So my podcast co-host, I don't know how well you know her, Mel.
I follow her a lot.
Yeah, conservative Christian. So we have like sort of two different, we're a little bit different, but we agree on most issues. I think there's an emerging sort of America First framing. Which is also, it's not, this isn't misleading people or anything. It's just like, why are we sending money to a foreign country to commit genocide when America is in such decline? Like, there are so many people, the middle class and the working class and the poor are suffering so much. Like, inflation is insane. Regular people can't pay their credit card bills, can't pay their mortgage. Like, and I think that's a very appealing argument to a lot of people on the right. And I think Israel, for whatever reason, Israel really was branded hard on the Republican side. I'm not really sure why. I think maybe because the left's like started to have questions, when they got into, a lot of like social justice stuff. But I think a lot of people on the right too, with the Christian issue especially, they're like, wait, they're killing Christians?
Yeah.
And then just like, they're killing kids. Like, we like kids. We're pro-life. Like, why are we supporting this? So I actually see a lot of promise emerging on the right. Like, I feel like the left is a little bit stuck. They're not really, or left, progressive, whatever, liberal, the Democrats, whatever. They're not really getting any better. And I don't see any like room for change. And most of them accept AIPAC money. So
why do you think that is, that the so-called left, whether it's like a conventional like Democrat liberal to a progressive, what do you think makes them like stay like stuck in that type of position?
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I'll give that one some thought. It's possible that there are more principled people on the right. I actually have, I'll share an interesting
go ahead,
personal anecdote. You can clip it if you want. Yeah. My husband, by pure coincidence, before me, his girlfriend was a state senator for Maryland. Her name is Sarah Alfrith. I don't care about saying this anymore. And she had Googled me shortly before we got married, and she like decided she hated me. She's a Democrat, and she was like, oh, she's a crazy conservative, like anti-COVID mandates and whatever. And like actually called my husband's dad and was like, tell him not to marry this woman. She's clearly like a crazy conservative. And we ran into her shortly before October 7th, like in August of 2023. And she said, asked how she was, and she said, oh, I just came back from Israel. Some people want me to run for the United States Congress. And so they sent me to Israel. And then fast forward a year, she is now in the United States Congress as a Democrat. Wow. So I don't know. Like, I actually think there might be more principled Congress people on the right who, once they see what's going on, are going to be like, actually, no.
I've noticed this as well, that AIPAC tends to spend more money on Democrats. They have to like buy them off a lot of times, because with the typical Republican that comes from the more like evangelical or like Zion conservative background, they just do it for free. They just do it for free. But there's a generational gap there, though. Because these type of Republicans tend to be older. But any like Republican under 40. One point you raised when you mentioned social justice, that this rang a bell for me, because a lot of Zionists, they're very good at inserting poison pills, especially for people on the left. They'll say like, "Oh, like how could you be like aligning yourself with MTG, like a racist?" Like they'll try to like use these type of divisive, the typical divide and rule stuff. It's a very like has a very Mean Girls energy to it. It's very cliquish where like they try to like say like, "Oh, how dare you form like a pact with somebody that has such reactionary views?" And Democrats are very cynical with this type of stuff where they'll use social justice causes from like BLM to like any generic civil rights appeals to get people to continue to be on like the Zionist plantation and prevent like the emergence of like a transpartisan coalition. You also see this on the right too. You'll see some people, I don't know how well versed you're into the lore with the whole like Peter Thiel sphere and all that, where these people will like the guy Costin Alamaru, who's also known by his pseudonym Bronze Age Pervert, will say like, "Oh, being pro-Palestinian is brown coded," or stuff like that. They'll insert these poison pills to like on both sides of the political spectrum. It's almost not to sound conspiratorial, it does seem very interesting how the same type of dynamic takes place across the political spectrum on almost the same time, and it's designed to create an environment that's divided and ruled. Ultimately.
Did you see the Alex Berenson and Dave Smith debate? It's where Alex Berenson, the entire thing was basically Alex Berenson saying Daryl Cooper's the anti-Semite because the International Holocaust Remembrance guy says so, and you're friends with Daryl Cooper and you stuck by him, so therefore you are a Holocaust denier. And that was like there was like 2.5 hours of that. Like I felt like that was the perfect exemplification of what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, it's guilt by association. There's no argument. It's like it really is a high school clique tier type of pseudo debate. There's no policy whatsoever being debated. How much aid Israel gets, how intense intelligence and security cooperation is between Israel, the U.S., and its NATO satrapies, and all that. There's no debate. There's no nuance. It's just like you hung out with this guy and you're Holocaust denier, or you hung out with this person and you're like support anti-white causes. I see this all the time across the political spectrum. I have a lot of friends of all different political backgrounds, and you see these type of weird feuds, factional feuds always emerging. And at the end of the day, what happens is everybody's divided and the Zionist house is unified. And you see this, that's why the inertia.
That's exactly the point. Yep. I mean, it's a design.
Yeah. No. Being in politics, you learn really fast that, there's some conspiracy theories that are wacky, but there's others that are actually valid when you look at the evidence. And a lot of this stuff, it's very coordinated, but I do think there is a paradigm shift. Now, to talk more about stuff on the ground in Gaza, there's a lot of, I've seen disputed figures about just the toll of suffering and everything. And based on what you've been able to study, how many people have died as a result of not just like the punitive strikes Israel has conducted on Gaza, but also like the humanitarian disaster that Israel's blockades and other methods of basically starving the population has caused?
Yeah, so I just want to say with a caveat, I'm not an expert on this matter, and to some extent, I know what Israel is doing is really bad, and I sometimes avoid looking at the details because it makes me too upset. And I've said, especially when I hear about the suffering of children, it's like I can't sleep at night. So, but so the official figure of dead is 60,000, but that's like how many bodies they've found and are counted and named. There are clearly there are like 500,000 people missing. I just heard that figure, I think from John Mersheimer on Tucker Carlson. It seems likely that most of those people are dead. Like, why else would they be missing? I mean, maybe some of them just can't find their families, but I think it's reasonable. And I mean, when you look at the pictures of the destruction of Gaza, I think it's reasonable to assume like the 500,000 figure is probably about right. And the Washington Post just printed a piece with the names of all the children who've been verified as dead under the age of 18, 18,500. And again, those are like the verified. So we know there are more. And you scroll through the names and you scroll, and they're like, you've hit the first 5. I'm actually shocked the Washington Post did this. Something must have changed over there. But, and you keep going and going, and then you're like, I can't believe, like, I stopped going at some point because it's too painful. But I would be surprised if it was less than 500,000 dead. And then when you count the child amputees, I mean, it's the highest number of child amputees ever in the world, I think.
Are most of those child deaths the result of the punitive strikes, or like the famine like conditions, or like just general like the lack of food and humanitarian supplies?
As someone who doesn't look at this in detail because I find it too upsetting, so I look at broad strokes. My understanding is that I think the majority are airstrikes now, but because the famine is really heating up. I mean, famine takes a long time to sort of. Israel hasn't been letting in supplies in a real way since March. And what happens is, people start to use. They have some livestock. They have seeds that they use for plants. They start to use those. So it takes a little while until people really start to starve. And now the starvation's really hitting. So more and more children are dying every day. And I saw a stat. I forgot what it was, but it was something like a quarter of the people who've starved the entire time in Gaza have starved within the last week or something. So we're going to see many. And as most people with a brain know, children are going to be the first to starve because they have very fast metabolisms, and they don't have as much body fat. And I'm sure you saw this whole thing about the Times article with the front page was showing a malnourished child very, very close to starvation, bare, just skin and bones. And it talked about a lot of children who died of starvation recently. But then it turned out this child had a pre-existing condition, although he had been healthy prior to the complete blockade of food. And all these, people, it's just embarrassing that I used to be friends with some of these people, like Alex Berenson, came out and were like, oh my God, this proves the New York Times is lying because he had a pre-existing condition and they didn't disclose that. But okay, children with pre-existing conditions are going to be the first to succumb to starvation. That makes it okay. I don't what?
Some of this stuff, it's a mask off moment, for sure. You see just the Talmudic sophistry of some of these people. It's just off the charts. It is like Olympic tier mental gymnastics some of these people are engaging in. What do you make of all these US vassal states like Canada, France, and the UK talking about now a so-called two-state solution? I get a really bad feeling that they're doing that to create an alibi for something that's really bad that's going to happen, that they're going to try to distance themselves from, but tacitly endorse behind the scenes.
You're probably right. It's just we did the right thing at the last one. You're seeing a lot of people now who denied the whole thing the whole time are like, oh, okay, wait, yeah, it is a genocide. They're realizing that they don't want to end up at the whatever tribunals, the Gaza Holocaust tribunals. I suspect you're right. I don't see a happy ending to this. I just don't. And I don't think it's in the people's hands anymore. Although I do, believe that we should all continue to speak out and try to do what we can.
Interesting. So you don't think there's going to be any type of ceasefire or anything else that will stop the suffering? It's just going to continue until there's some type of mass expulsion or even mass starvation at this point?
I mean, Netanyahu's made it clear that that's the plan. So, I mean, they're trying to make it so miserable that they drive them out. Where they'll drive them out to is unclear because Egypt and Jordan don't want all these refugees, first of all, and they also don't want to be complicit in this ethnic cleansing. So they're not. So I think it's going to be a slow death, basically, for the Palestinians of Gaza. Like, there's this the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation bullshit organization.
That's awful. Yeah.
And then it's designed to create like riot conditions. Mel and I talked about it on our podcast, but I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you have 1.7 million people. They have like 4 or 5 distribution centers, and they're open for an average of 11 minutes a day. So these people are like waiting in line, walking miles. They don't know when it's going to open. They just get a text like, it's open for the next 11 minutes. And of course, like, these starving people are going to stampede, and then they start shooting. It's just an excuse to like create conditions to kill people. So clearly, they're intentionally creating a situation where they can kill people. Say they had no choice but to shoot. And I'm sure you followed this Green Beret who was on Tucker Carlson recently, who's, coming out, and they're trying to smear him as a wife beater. Like,
it's the typical poo pee approach to like to smear people. It's awful.
It's so stupid. I mean, first of all, it doesn't look like he went. My co-host Mel actually did a thread. She actually went to the courthouse. She happens to live near where this ostensibly took place. It seems as though they manufactured the arrest warrant and the website, like, show with his mugshot. So she went on Glenn Greenwald and talked about it. But even if it's true, even if he had a domestic violence incident with his wife, I don't approve of that. Nobody thinks wife beating is good, but that doesn't mean he's lying about what he's seeing in Gaza.
I mean, if you look at the Zionists, pro-Zionists, if you're going to play that game, they've got plenty of skeletons in their closet, like in the pro-Zionist crowd. Like, you don't want to play that game. That's actually a game they'll lose pretty easily once you drop all the relevant information. You mentioned your family being in the West Bank. I have said this from the jump that Miriam Adelson's massive injection of money towards Trump was largely based on the quid pro quo of Trump recognizing West Bank annexations. Because if you look at the Israeli hard right, technically Gaza is not part of biblical Israel, but Judea, so-called Judea and Samaria is, and that's like where the most the freak show Israeli hard right, the Ben Gavirs, Belazos, Smotrich, though that's where the settler crowd wants to completely sink their fangs in. Do you think that an annexation is likely going to be on the table now that everybody's attention is fixated on Gaza? That they'll start to like do some backdoor annexation while everybody's not looking?
Well, they already are. I mean, they're already starting to drive people off their land. That's been going on for a while, and I think the settler movement, the more the Israeli government, so during more liberal governments, the government has reined in the settlers and basically like said, we're not going to look the other way while you try to drive Palestinians out of their homes. I mean, what's happening now is they're just literally driving Palestinians out of their homes. These rogue settlers who come from like Brooklyn and whatever. And the Israeli government is condoning it and helping them. And they kill Palestinians. They killed an American Palestinian kid the other day. And Mike Huckabee actually condemned it, which was shocking, but I guess he was under some pressure to do so. So they just kill them if they resist and take their homes and take the land. And I think that's the plan. That's clearly the plan.
Yeah. No, it's pretty gut-wrenching stuff, but I think this is a good spot to wrap things up. But Jenin, I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your insights. But before we part ways, where can followers of the show keep up with your latest work, podcasts, and just like any other projects you're involved in?
So my Twitter handle is at Jenin Younes Esquire, ESQ, at just my name and full name and then ESQ. And the podcast is previously prohibited. We do a couple episodes a week. We try to do lives on Sunday, although I have a sort of long European vacation coming up, so probably not after this Sunday, probably not going to be for a while. But that's mainly where you can find my stuff. And actually, Mel and I are also going to create a Substack page. We've been talking about that, but it's not up yet.
Highly recommend it. Yep, I'm also on there. Yep.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely, very interesting discussion. You asked great questions.
All right. Great stuff, Jenin. And thank you all for tuning in to the show. And make sure to subscribe and share Headline Geopolitics. Until next time, this is José Niño signing off.